disappointment nowadays. The bread that we eat nowadays very often is not satisfying our needs. It's not up to our expectations. Very often we find ourselves eating an artificial product that we do not recognize as bread. Why is this so? We could ask the bread. We will talk with the bread later on. We should be asking the person who baked the bread, the bakery, and I'm sure we will get very interesting answers. Very often it is for us, consumers, customers, who are shaping the bread. We have to think, and I want you to think about this, we have to think about our expectations with regard to bread. Very often what we expect is this. This is a vending machine, and we want bread ready anytime, anywhere, always ready. We think of bread as a commodity, as a Coca-Cola can or tobacco, or it has to be ready, and we are not being modest in our expectations, so we have to be re-educated in our bread culture. We have to think, what do we want from the bread? What's the bread that we want? What bread is it available, and so on. In order to analyze this, I have developed a theory. I always wanted to say this is the theory of Yarza's theory, and this is the handcraft theory. And I'm thinking about what's the bread that we're eating. Maybe at the coffee break or at the lunch break we can talk about this, but most of the bread that we are eating, the price is very low. I bought a bread the other day for 35 cents of an euro, 35 cents, but it's very low quality bread. They have worsened the materials, the ingredients, and I'm not talking about bread that you buy in a large hypermarket, but you go to a bakery shop and you go to buy this type of bread, and it responds to this scheme. There is a battle in which the handcraftsman has been involved. The bakers have been involved. We've worked for the customers, and in order to be more convenient, we try to compete with a rival that is not a real rival, this supermarket bread, this gas station bread. And it is like if a very, very good restaurant in your neighborhood will be competing with the frozen shelf at the supermarket, frozen food shelf. It says a very good wine from Ribera or Rioja were to compete with this cooking wine or something like that. So no one's understood this. So very often bakers do low price, low quality bread. And what do they do? If they do not follow the rules of the game, good ingredients, good methodology, and so on, that's when you use different components, different ingredients, additives, or with these improvers. And why isn't the bread as seductive as it was before, as attractive as it was before? I like making bread, but I wanted to talk to you instead of doing it. But is it so difficult to talk about bread? One of the big attractiveness of the bread is the big transformation. If you think about it, few of the food that we take suffer such an amazing change from the ingredients, flour, water, salt. I'm not talking about the historical value or symbolic value. That's why you're never going to see in my presentation picture of a lady in old Egypt working with the wheat and the flour and so on. But we've seen a great transformation beyond the plastic transformation that we see that it takes place. We see a metamorphic transformation, fermentation. So that's one of the aspects that are attractive about bread. But talking about ingredients, things couldn't be easier. Making bread, even a lot of people do not believe this, it's very simple. We just need water and flour and something that will increase racing thing, a racing agent, and for example yeast. That's what we use it, and that's the way of doing bread. There's no more to it. Once you have mixed flour and water, then you've got a dough. This wheat dough, we work with it in order to promote elasticity. There is one thing inside that is called gluten, and we will get a very spongy bread. So what can go wrong with this? Because it's not very easy. On one hand, we can reduce the quality of the ingredients, these low quality flours, and that will mean that you will have to use some improvers. They can be problems on the methodology that you use. If you add too much yeast to this dough, it will ferment very, very soon, and the problem is that it will taste to nothing. And that's one of the big problems that we found nowadays. You buy some bread and it smells like nothing and it tastes like nothing at all. So what's wonderful about the bread is that nature follows its course. So if instead of fermenting this dough in 50 minutes of an hour, I add less yeast and I ferment it for 8 hours, the bacteria will add it with the compounds that we identified as bread. There will be organic acid compounds that we can taste and we can smell. Even if you haven't ever put your hands on flour, this is something that it is very easy to do. We're born knowing how to do bread, kind of. And how's the bread that we want? Let's look forward. This idea of promise that we've heard at the very beginning. The bread that we want is unique, because each one of us has a bread on our mind. Some people like baguettes, the other one will like more rustic bread, the Castilian bread, like the one that we can see on the picture. And talking about the unique nature of the bread, I'm gonna tell you a story. This is real. If we ferment this dough appropriately, we will be curdled with the flours, with the flavors, with whatever we have around in the environment. If we add the salt and the water of the area, it will be totally different. This, I bought it in Amazon.com. You can buy it there. It's a little bit of dough. This can be the most famous one in the world. Is dough from the San Francisco bread. It's very famous there, San Francisco bread in California. Why is it so easy? It's dried. For generations, they have baked bread, and it is very acid bread with the textures that is a little bit gummy. And they investigated years ago what was happening, and they analyzed the bread dough, and they discovered there is a bacteria that's shared by all of the doughs. They call it lactobacillus from San Francisco. What's the bread that we want? What is it absolutely necessary in order to bake the bread that we want? Secret ingredients. I'm going to reveal the big bread secret, and I'm not going to be talking about improvers, flavorers. The secret ingredients can be summarized by time. Time is money. It's not for free, but it doesn't mean that we have to innovate very much, and we have to respect tradition. In this theory, in this spiral, in hand craftsmen are in the middle of like a storm in which time it's extremely important. If you think about it, a well-bred, well-done bread probably needs good facility, refrigeration areas, good stuff. And if you're going to do a good bread, you need a good flour, and it has a greater price. I'm not talking about a luxury product, but a well-made bread that has the appropriate price. And these are the secret ingredients that have to be used by the baker. And why isn't this always the case? What other problems can we find? I'm also bringing good and bad news like my predecessors. What are the bad news? This is wheat, bad news can be summarized like this. I really like Jose's presentation, although it was very small. I loved it, his presentation on the amaranth, and he talked about how out of the 7,000 subtypes of amaranth, right now they are cropping very few. And in the case of wheat and of cereal, we've lost a great amount of subtypes. Many of them were not profitable. Some of them were very local. And right now we are baking bread with very, very few species of wheat. And that's a shame. We have to think about this. Fortunately, a lot of people is doing a great effort trying to recover some of these wheat subspecies in order to produce better bread. And this wheat is not there only because of the large amount of subspecies that we've lost, but they represent the recipes that we've lost. Obviously, right now, less recipes are baked, and hankersmen, bakers who had to close their stores because of this theory, because this espiral, they had not given or trained other people on those recipes. But we must not be pessimistic. What are the good news? This is the 21st century. The good news is everything else. Never in history, I don't know who was the speaker, but someone said that we always look at the future with a great deal of optimistic. We always think that the future was going to be better, and this is the case. Never a baker had such a large amount of knowledge. We do not have this many wheat subtypes, but now bakers have fermentation chambers in order to regulate temperature, time. And a baker today doesn't even have to work at night. He can work during the day and do the fermentation at night. Ted, who is on the internet, nowadays a baker has publications on the internet, blogs, other bakers. 200 years ago, the baker knew the recipe given to him by his dad, and that was all. Who's this man? Martín Berasategui. Who's this man? A baker. This gentleman, his name is Francisco Tejero, Master of Masters, one of the big persons in bakery. He's the champion of artistic bakery in 1992. He's got a large amount of publications. He's done books. He's published books for the general audience, for professionals. What about the next picture? This is the baker, Xavier Barriga, the most famous one. He's probably the bread superstar in Spain. We need faces. I'm not talking about 3, 5, 10 superstars. This is not useful, but we need some faces. And why is this so? Because no one knows about bakers. They traditionally worked at night. And this wasn't allowed on the Middle Ages, for example. So the bakers and other jobs got special permissions to work at night. And it was someone that you cannot rely on. There in English, there's the baker's dozen, which are 13. They were so many that they were doing more. Pieces that weighed a little bit more than was stipulated, and they couldn't give you as much as they could. They cut from other pieces and they gave you more. So this need for faces, knowing Tejero and Barriga, and everyone saying Tejero and Barriga, this superstar baker, it is absolutely necessary for us to respect the product and to value the product. If you know what's on a good bread, you will be ready to pay for it and to appreciate it. A lot of people know about wine, which is a product very similar to bread with similar bacteria and so on. People know about wine and regions. They know about wineries, varieties. A lot of people tell you, I drank a Shiraz from Chile, I drank a Cabernet Sauvignon, and they do not know about the bread. So if we can foster the bread culture, and if we have superstars, bakers, customers will appreciate it, but also the rest of the bakers will respect it and will be as skilled as this superstar. And this way we will reconquer the world of gastronomy, where that doesn't take into consideration bread now. Any average Spaniard can mention 2 or 3 chefs. Arguiñano, Berasategui, Argat, Ruscadella, everyone knows about them, but no one can mention a baker. So that's a little bit sad, and that's what we have to do. And to conclude, and I have 40 seconds left, I think this is the moment of bread. We have to recover the respect and the love for the bread. This is something that we all have to do. It is the moment right now for us to be informed. That's why I'm here. And we have to demand and to complain if it's necessary about the bread that we are eating. Bakers need customers and customers need bakers. If we do not do this, in 10 years' time, I won't be here to explain what's going on with bread. And to conclude, I just want to make you think about all the things that I've said and replace how many times I've said bread for the symbolic power of bread. I want you to replace this by something that's simple, deep, and beloved. So this way you will be able to understand how important bread is. Thank you.